Welcome to Advanblack's YouTube channel. I'm Steve, service technician for Advanblack, and today we've got something very cool to show you. We've been working on this for quite a long time. Just now got a finished product, and this is actually going to be the prototype test. We're going to put everything on the bike today, but it is this right here. Today, I'm going to show you how to install all of this stuff. Now, as you can see, we've got a stretched rear end on this bike that's quite a bit different from what you're actually used to seeing from Advanblack. This setup is not made with ABS. This is a full fiberglass rear end. You're going to get the stretch bags, you're going to get these stretched rear fender, and of course these stretched side covers. Like I said, all heavy duty fiberglass, color matched, ready to put on your bike, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. Now, my bags are already built, the lids are already on the bags, and then these are stock lids. No matter what lids you have out on the market, they will fit on these bags. There's really no proprietary lids that go to certain bags out on the market. Now, we have Advanblack color matched 8-inch lids on this bike, so later on I'll be swapping that stuff over. But just to save some time today, we've got the bags already built, but we're going to get the camera over here and I'm going to show you how to remove this rear fender. We have a Dominator fender on here, and it doesn't matter if you have the Dominator, the CVO, or an OEM. The removal and installation process is pretty much all the same. Once we get the fender installed, we'll set the side covers on here, we'll set the bags up on here, and then I'll also be showing you how to install the strip lights that go between the bags and the fender, and also in between the bags and the fender, because this swoops out so far in the back and it needs some stability. We do have some spacers that we have to put in there as well, so we'll put the spacers in, and then once you install the lights, you don't see the spacers anymore, but it just makes that whole rear end a little bit more solid as it swoops out in the back of the bike. Also one thing to note, you will have to run a side dump exhaust like you see in the picture right here. When you have a down and out bag, they don't make exhaust long enough to actually protrude that fender. Any type of dual exhaust or the single side exhaust is going to impede you getting all this stuff installed. So if you want to run a setup like this, you will have to get a side dump pipe. So because this is already kind of going to be a long video, let's get the camera over here and let's start getting this fender off. So the first thing you need to do is check right along here. If you've got anything zip tied off, if your main wire harness coming from underneath your seat going back to your lights is zip tied off in here, you need to cut those zip ties and get that stuff loose. Second thing you need to do is get you a flathead screwdriver, and we're going to remove the clip that's up here. If you have standard OEM clips, you're going to take that same flathead screwdriver. It's going to look a little different than this, and you're going to pop that down and that will come off. These do the same thing. You're just going to put the screwdriver in the backside and give it a pop. Right inside this hole, you're going to have a Torx 40. You're going to get in there. I usually use a little magnet like this to poke it right through there and grab that bolt. Let me pull it out. If you've got the 4-point docking system, go ahead and remove that. Just makes it easier. You're not scratching anything. And you've got one bolt back here, but we're going to go to the other side and remove the same three, the front one, and then these two to remove the docking hardware. So now both sides are the same. 4-point docking system is gone and the front bolt is out. All we have left is this rear bolt, and we're also going to relax this bottom rear end here to let this come apart so we can pull that fender out easily. Now, with my bike, I have Air Ride, which has a compressor here and a tank on the other side. In order to get to these two bolts down here on this saddlebag bracket, you've got a bolt here and you've got a bolt inside that goes to the inner fender bracket. It goes up here behind your fender. In order for me to get to those two bolts, I need to go ahead and drop my compressor down and my air tank down. And with the camera cut, I'm on the back of the bike. I'm going to take off my French in license plate frame as well, just to save some time. And if you have an OEM fender, you don't have to worry about this. You've got a little plastic plug back there. You pop that plug and you'll see the nut on the inside of that. But we'll cover that when we get to that part. So for now, I'm just going to cut this and go ahead and do the stuff I need to do on this bike to get to those bolts. All right, so I got my air ride stuff out of the way, and you can see right here we've got a bolt here and a bolt here. This bolt goes through the fender bracket that goes on the inside of the fender. This bolt out here just simply goes through this bag rail. What we want to do is take this inside bolt off so this will relax. That fender bracket keeps everything pulled together in the rear. You probably could see that that just popped out. What that's going to do is just relax this whole rear end. We're going to go over here and do the same thing on that inside bolt. Now on an OEM fender, right here in the rear, like I said, you'll have that black plastic plug. You can pop that and you'll see a bolt. You don't have to pop that. That bolt isn't going anywhere. You go from the inside, reach up above your tri-bar light, and you'll feel a nut. When you take that nut off on the inside, it's going to allow that fender to come away from that bracket. We've taken the bolts out so you can hear that bracket in there is loose. So what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and take my center one out. And we're going to let that drop down and come out. That's the fender bracket that we're talking about. The two bolts we just took out prior to this was one here and one here. So all of this keeps the whole rear end together. So when you take these two bolts out, it allows the frame rails or the fender struts in the rear to separate. Now I'm doing this on a Dominator fender, so it's a little bit different than the OEM fender, but we do have instructional videos right here on the Advanblack YouTube channel. You can go back and watch how to remove an OEM fender. Just go back and watch the how to install a Dominator fender, and it'll show you how to remove an OEM fender. Now we're gonna go inside this hole here, and we're gonna loosen these just like that. I'm not gonna remove them. And what that did is give us a pivot point now, so I can pivot this fender. So what I'm going to do is right up here where the wire harness comes up from underneath the fender from your tail lights up into underneath your seat, you're going to disconnect the black plug that goes back to your rear tail lights. Just like that. You have a gray one and a black one. Gray one goes to your tank, black one goes back to your tail lights. Disconnect that. We're going to tilt that fender down, and we're going to pull that big Molex connector through. Just like that. We're just going to lay this, feed this back through, and lay it up out of the way. So when we get ready to pull this fender off, nothing gets caught on the bike. Yours will be a single wire harness if you're doing the OEM. It won't be strands like this. This is for the Dominator. So once again, tilting that forward, you'll see this nut right here. That's one of the fender nuts. You've got one in the rear and one in the front on both sides. What I'm gonna do is tilt this forward, take a 3/4 inch socket, get in here. That bolt is held on by the fender. It has like a oblong shape in the back that holds it on, kind of like a fender bolt. So you're just gonna loosen this, reach in to make sure that that's not slipping around in the back. And that's gonna make our life a lot easier when we go to pull this fender off to get these two front bolts out. You can't really get to the rear ones. It's really hard to do, so I'll show you how to squeeze it out once we get this other side off. So once we have those two front bolts and nuts out, we'll go ahead and finish removing the rear bolts. We're gonna do one side at a time. Go ahead and pull that bolt out, and you'll see that that's pretty well dropped down now. What I like to do is just put the seat bolt back in, just give you something to hang on to. Another reason why I like keeping these magnets around, just pull that out like that. Now if we move to the rear of the bike, we've got those two front ones out, but our back ones are still in. And they're right here, so they're super hard to figure out a way to get in there to get that. But even with your OEM metal fender, you can flex the sidewalls of the fender in. We've relaxed this back here. So if we get in here and we squeeze one side, you can see that bolt start to come out. Do it on the other side and pull it straight back out just like that. Walk it off the bike. So if you're finding yourself having a little bit of difficulty getting that rear fender off, squeezing those sides in, of course the ABS one, the Dominator, or any other aftermarket fender that's ABS is going to be easier than the OEM, but the metal on the fender does flex, so you just have to push pretty hard. You're not going to bend it, you're not going to mess up the paint, just push them in and pop them out. But you can also take this bolt out right here on both sides. You can see the back side of it here on that side, and the front side of it here on this side. And that's going to release this chrome from the brackets. So if you feel up in here, this chrome hangs over the rear strut. So it's a shorter distance between here and here than it is the black and the black. So if you find yourself having trouble, take this bolt out and this bolt out, or just loosen them so it can pull away from that black. It's going to naturally want to pull away from it. So those bolts hold everything tight. So, you know, down here you don't have anything, so you get quite a bit of flex. But up here, there's not much flex because of that steel. So go ahead and pull these bolts and pull that apart. Now we moved our fender over here to the soft table. There's only a few things you need off of this fender for your new one. You need those rear 2 bolts. Remember, we've already taken the 2 bolts off the front here and here to actually remove the fender from the bike. Do the same thing back here. Remove these 2 bolts. Get those out of the way. Just set them over here off to the side. And then you'll have this metal piece here with the 2 bolts on it up in the front that just simply comes off. You have washers on the outside, little plastic washers. You're going to spin those off. Don't yank them off. Go ahead and pull them up just a little bit and then unscrew them, because if you start just pulling these off, you're going to strip that out and it's not going to hold. So unscrew those just like a nut and then pull this metal piece out. We're going to utilize that in the new fender. So let's get this off the table and get our new fender up here. So now we're getting ready to prepare the new fender to put on the bike. We're going to take our rear 2 mounting bolts. We're going to go ahead and mount those, and then the front ones we'll put in once the fender is actually on the bike. Also, you'll see right here on the sides these 2 holes on both sides. That's going to be for your reinforcement spacers, and they're right here. You're going to get the bolts and the spacers to put in here. The bag already has holes in it that are threaded, so that bolt's just going to go right in there, and that's going to line up the whole rear end and also pull it all together. And once we get our lights ran in the middle there, you won't see those spacers. So the lights that come with this, now this one's still in the wrapper, but the lights that come with this are bent a little bit. They are a little bit flexible, and I'm going to show you how to install all of that. But that's going to run right down the back side of this in between the bag, so it's going to cover up those spacers. Now this does come with a chrome or black license plate frame. We're going to go ahead and mount our 2-piece or 1-piece or passenger backrest plug in. We're going to go ahead and get it in here. It's very easy because they're plastic just to jam them on there, but what you're doing is you're just stripping out the tightness of that hole. So just make sure that you screw it on the best you can, just like a nut, and get it tight. We're going to take our rear 2 bolts, washers, we're going to put those in. We're not going to do the front ones until it's on the bike. That's just going to make it easier to get on there later. Now if you didn't notice that when you took these out, on the back side of this, it's oblonged on the back side of the nut, so it falls into the oblong space on here. So make sure that you have the bolt turned until it's all the way in space. And that is pretty much all we need to do at this point to go ahead and get this fender on. We're ready to put the fender on the bike. Remember, the front is going to slide in pretty easy, but the rear, we're going to have to pinch in a little bit to get those rear bolts in. So we're going to push in right here. We're just going to try to get one side at a time to go in. Get the other side in. It's a lot tighter than the other one. We'll lift it up into place. Once we get it pushed up into place, you can kind of hold it there and go to the side. Get our rear fender bolt ready. And we'll just look inside the hole the best we can and get that bolt lined up. Get that one started. Come to this side. Pull this one up into place. Now remember, we have to put the front ones in, so we don't want to tighten those all the way down. We still want to be able to teeter this fender down. These should be pretty well lined up. Remember, we're just going to get it started. It's better to leave everything loose until you have all of the bolts in, just to make sure that you can move stuff around a little bit. I'm going to pull my front ones tight, then we'll pull The rear one's tight just to make sure that we do it equal. Now from here we can go ahead and put our 4-point docking system back in. Now to finish buttoning up the rear end, all we have to do is reinstall our fender bracket back here. Now, you have to put it back on because this bolt and this bolt help pull your saddlebag rails together. If you don't put this back on, your saddlebag rails will be kind of apart a little bit, and that's gonna mess up the way that your bags sit on here and butt up next to the fender. So we're gonna reinstall this with the bolts that we took out earlier. So now that we have our rear fender installed, I'm going to show you how to install the tail light. You're going to get 2 pieces of aluminum like this, and it has 3M tape on the back side. You're going to get 2 flexible lights, also with 3M tape on the back side. And of course, your wiring harness is going to go up to another harness underneath your seat. These aluminum pieces are marked with an R and an L for right and for left. Tail lights don't matter either way. Basically what's going to happen is we're going to mount this to the side of the fender on both sides, and then the light is going to mount to that piece of aluminum, and it's going to fill the gap in between the fender and the bag. To place this bar, we're going to go ahead and put the light on the bar and then install it. And because we want the light even like that, with the side of the bag and not protruding or recessed in too far, we'll go ahead and mount the light to the bar, and then we'll mount the bar itself to the fender. That way we can make sure that the light is flush with the fender. So before we stick anything to this fender, we need to clean this area with an isopropyl alcohol. I use a surface prep like this, but you can just mix up some alcohol and some water. Doesn't matter. You can use straight alcohol if you want. I go ahead and spray that, and I'm going to clean that area where we're going to be sticking that. I'm going to do both sides. And because we're going to be sticking the light to this piece of aluminum, I'm going to do the same thing to the aluminum. I just want to give my 3M tape the best surface that I can give it for this 3M to stick to it. I'm going to take my thumbnail on this 3M tape, and I'm just going to score that red backing. What that does is kind of activates that 3M tape. If you don't have fingernails, you can use a little screwdriver or something, but you just want to score that whole back side of that. Make sure that you stick this on the right side. Don't stick it in here. Flip it to where the 3M goes on the outside here. We're going to stick it right here on this flat edge. So I'm going to place this up to the edge of that plastic up there. And I'm going to make sure that it's flush on this as I go down. Because once this is stuck, it's pretty well stuck. So I can bring this up here and we can kind of mock this up on here. It's going to follow that curve of that fender. We don't want the bottom sticking out past it, so we're going to get it as close as we can. We're going to go ahead and score that 3M tape again with our thumbnail. I'm going to come around here to the side so I can see the profile a little bit better. Before I start sticking it, I want to make sure I'm not hanging past the bottom, I'm not hanging past the top. The light, the edge of the light is meeting the edge of the fender. So this is the part you want to kind of take your time on. I'm going to barely stick my bottom edge where I can still peel it if I need to. I'll make sure that that's flush. Continue to follow this up to make sure that it's flush with the edge of the fender. Before I hard stick it, I'll come to the back. Make sure everything looks good. Now that we have both installed, we're going to use a towel to put over this. I'm going to put the towel over it. I'm just going to push into the fender and down with my thumb. So I'm pushing the light on the aluminum and the aluminum onto the fender, all at the same time. Just making sure that it's secured. Now we're going to take our left-hand side cover. This is what the side cover looks like. As you can see, this profile goes down. This side is going to match the inside of the bag. When we get it on, you've got on the back side, you've got your 3 pins, just like your OEM one. So we're going to walk this over. We're going to line up our pins. Go ahead and pop that into place. Just like that. We're going to do that on both sides. So we're going to take our wire from our light. We're going to run it through this hole in the back, up through the side. We're going to zip tie it off here. We're going to go right here between the side cover and the frame and go into underneath the seat. We're going to do that on both sides. Inside your hardware, you're going to get this little wire harness like this. Male on one side, female on the other. And of course your 2 plugs for the tail lights. So because we've already taken the other fender off, we've disconnected the line at the bike that goes back to the tail light. So we're going to plug this in. These 2 are going to go to the other lights. Now, like I said, you will get a chrome or black, whichever one you choose, curved license plate that's LED lit. The plug that's underneath that seat there, that extra plug that's back there, is for that LED light. It's just a 2-pin connector, so you're just going to plug that in and you'll have a light in the rear on your license plate. So, like I said, one big inline circuit coming out of the bike into our magic box, out of the magic box into the Advanblack harness. These 2 go back to the tail lights. Now I've went ahead and thrown one of the bags up there real quick, and I only have one bolt in here. I don't have it quite lined up or anything. We don't have our spacers in yet. That's why the gap is different. But I just wanted to show you what it looks like on there. I'm going to go ahead and kick the bike on so you can see the tail lights. Now you can see the magic brake box works. We've got that hyper flash on the tail lights. We've got a right blinker, sequential. We've got a left blinker, sequential, and then off. Now we still have to put our spacers in. Remember the spacers that I showed you at the beginning of the video? So we're only going to put the front pins in when we mount the saddlebags. We want to leave the rear of it loose so we can pull it out a little bit to get that spacer up in and get our bolt in. And if you got the screw in kind, you can leave it half screwed in. You can screw it all the way in. If you're using the Harley OEM clips and pins, go ahead and lock it into place. And as you can see, I can move my bag now so I can get my spacers in. I'm going to pull our bag out a little bit, get our bolt through, get our spacer in there, and then pull the bag back down into place. I'm going to put the bolt right to the edge of the spacer so we're not scratching the paint when we bring this down into place. Bring it back over. Down into place on the saddlebag bar and get these started. I got to get up under here with a 1/2-inch socket and get these snug down. Pretty much any kind of down and out bag system that's on the market that swoops out like this real far away from the bike has to have those spacers and those bolts in there keeping everything tight in the rear end. If not, everything's just back there flopping around. So just keep in mind that if you want this style rear end, you will have to bolt it to the fender in the rear. So it's no longer a quick disconnect saddlebag. None of them on the market are. So you've got your 2 bolts up here and you've got your 2 bolts under there if you want to remove your bag. And that's just how it is. Welcome to the world of customizing your Harley-Davidson. We're going to take our wires that we got up here. We're going to just kind of push them up underneath the seat, clean them up the best that we can. You have a big gap in between your seat and this top of this ECM, so don't worry about crushing any wires. The seat pans are all solid underneath there and they rest on the frame, not on top of the battery. So you've got plenty of room in there for your wires. I'm gonna go ahead and put my seat on. We're gonna see how everything looks. So as you may see on the back of the bike, we have no spot for the license plate. And that's because this is a prototype. The one you receive from Advanblack will have a like recessed area in. It'll be recessed in with a curved plate that you can get in chrome or black. So don't worry about that. Mine's just a prototype, so that's why it's not in there. So that's it. Shows you how easy it is to put on. We got the side covers, the bags on. We've got the lids swapped over now to the 8-inch lids. We threw the tour pack on and the seat on so you can see what it looks like completed. It's pretty easy to put on. There's not a whole lot to it. You just have those 4 bolts in the back that don't normally come on, like your 4.5-inch stretch bags. If you have any questions on this install, you know the deal. Comment section down below. Try to help you the best that I can. If you want to get your hands on one of these, jump on over to Advanblack's website. Choose the color of your bike. We'll get them painted up for you, ship them to you, and they'll be ready to install on your bike when you receive them. I'm going to get out of here and get myself back to work. I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, as always, be safe. Keep your knees in the breeze.